Kenya has signed an economic partnership agreement with the European Union, securing duty-free access for its agricultural products in its largest export market. Now, we have conversations about this morning, but it's important to mention that the agreement was signed yesterday in Nairobi, and this was achieved after 7 months of negotiations, making it one of the EU's quickest deals.
Will now access the European Union market duty-free, marking a boost to the country's export trade to the huge market. Under the deal, Kenya's products such as horticulture, tea, and fruits, among others, will enjoy preferential tax treatment in the Union with 27 countries. Also, European goods entering Kenya will see tariffs reduced over a 25-year period under the agreement.
The agreement will grant Kenyan products immediate duty-free, quota-free entry into the EU from the day it comes into effect. And in recognition of our varied stage of progress along the development journey, products from the EU will progressively receive duty reductions over a period of 25 years. Although the EU is already Kenya's largest export destination, accounting for 21% of Kenya's total exports, the agreement we have negotiated provides significant opportunities to enhance this performance. It assures a stable market for industrialists, for our farmers, and also industrialists in the European Union.
The EU currently accounts for 21% of Kenya's overall exports. And speaking during the signing, the EU Commissioner for Trade, Valdis Dombrovskis, described the agreement as the most ambitious trade deal it had entered into with any African country.
On behalf of the European Union, it's my great honor to be here for what is a truly historic occasion. The conclusions of the negotiations of Economic Partnership Agreement marks a new and exciting departure in our relations. This agreement contains strong ambitions on trade and sustainable development. Indeed, this is the most ambitious trade deal the EU has concluded with any African country when it comes to climate protection, labor rights, and gender equality. This will benefit both sides, our people, our environment, and our climate. And let's be clear, it will also benefit our economy.
Kenya, Africa's 7th largest economy, is a major exporter of tea, coffee, flowers, fruits, and vegetables.
Joining us this morning on the show to discuss this is the Associate Professor, Faculty of Economics and Management Sciences, University of Nairobi, Kenya, Dr. X.N. Iraki. Good morning. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning, and how are you?
Very well, thank you. Hope you're well as well. This is good news, it seems. This trade gives duty-free and quota-free access to Kenya. But let's talk about what this actually means for the people of Kenya, for the average person in Kenya. How does this translate to the economy in Kenya?
You have to remember that agriculture is probably the biggest contributor to Kenya's GDP, about 25%. So we are always looking for new markets for particular agricultural products. So by getting quota-free and duty-free access to the European Union, we see a big market emerging for our goods, particularly in agriculture. And remember, the new government promised that they are going to create jobs. So they see that as an opportunity to create jobs for the youth, for the unemployed, and to expand the agricultural sector, and by extension, the economy. That is why it is received with such open arms.
Okay, and I also want to understand better, for the average, businessman in Kenya, who's, trying to export, was the EU meant to be like the very first option? Are there other countries that Kenyan business and Kenyan exporters, might have been looking forward to expanding and, of course, opening up this type of economic relationship with?
I think the reason why this is so much welcomed is if you look at our neighboring countries, Uganda, Tanzania, maybe Ethiopia, we probably grow the same crops. So if you're talking about exporting the basic commodities, it's very hard to export the neighboring countries. So we are very happy when we can see another market that is different from ours, like the European Union. But it's not going to be instantaneous for the small farmers in Kenya and the neighboring countries. It's going to take time because for you to export the European market, you have to adhere to very stringent conditions like pesticide content and other requirements. So it is going to take some time, but we see it as an opportunity because the neighboring countries can't import what we produce in this country.
Yeah, but another thing is, was the making it free now, was that really the bone of contention initially? Were Kenyan exporters really very keen on the EU in the past? And is this really the incentive that would open up that space more? Is there other ways that President William Ruto maybe needs to look into the viability of exports from Kenya, aside just a trade deal with the EU?
There is another big market that we have been exploring beyond European Union, particularly in China. If you look at some of the products in Kenya, particularly avocados and macadamia fruits, we have been searching for a market in China, and the market has become very vibrant, with a lot of farmers growing those crops for export to the Chinese market. But the European market has been particularly good for things like tea and particularly flowers. So I think the argument with the government is that if we can crack the European market, then we can use that model to crack the other markets like the Asian markets, specifically China.
All right. Would you say that this move by President William Ruto has, in some way, vindicated his government? We do see, if you recall, in the past few months, he's come under a lot of criticism because the average Kenyan they've complained about how the cost of living has increased ever since he came into power with the Finance Bill 2023, and all the conversations about the increase in hunger and the strikes and the protests. We saw all of this. Do you think that this maybe might be a step in the right direction, and in some case is winning him over to the sides of those who have criticized his government thus far?
Since this government came to power about nine months ago, they have had issues about their policies. You talked about tax, the cost of living, the cost of fuel. So any quick win like getting a duty-free or quota-free market to the European Union is seen as a victory. But what we should be aware of is that this particular bilateral agreement is between Kenya and European Union and not with the East African community. And initially it was supposed to be signed between European Union and East African community. So while Kenyans are happy and celebrating, we need to wait and see what our neighbors are going to say about it. They may feel that Kenya is moving ahead and leaving the rest of East Africa. But from a political point of view, this is good news. We can debate the unintended and intended consequences later.
If this really also points in the direction of Kenya's stance on the Russia-Ukraine war, because I understand that the EU has, seemingly, from their position and, has taken sides, and they would not likely do these deals with countries that weren't, necessarily pro-Ukraine or pro-NATO. So is this, maybe a sign to show that William Ruto's government or Kenya's government has also taken a side with the Russia-Ukraine war?
That's an interesting question because a few weeks ago, the Russian foreign minister was visiting Kenya, and I'm sure some deals came up on the table. So I'm surprised that after the Russian foreign minister visited Kenya, now we have a deal with the European Union. So probably that was a reaction to posting the Russian foreign minister, but it has not come out clearly whether that is a reaction or not. I'm sure with the time the truth is going to come out.
All right, we know that in 2014, the EU and EAC had already been having conversations about going into this sort of partnerships, but only Kenya has come through with it. Are we expecting to see that now that Kenya has come through, would see other nations in the Eastern African part of the continent then following suit and maybe exploring this option?
That's an interesting observation because Kenya has signed that agreement alone. But I know Rwanda has signed but not ratified. It was not ratified by their parliament. So I'm waiting to see how the rest of East African community members, Tanzania, Southern Sudan, Rwanda, and we are eager to see how they are going to react. But my suspicion is that they probably will do some negotiation through East African community before they sign, so that it is seen as a project of East African community. But this puts pressure on other members of the East African community to join this partnership.
All right, brilliant. We hope that, of course, this also pushes the William Ruto government to invest in the infrastructure in Kenya there, so it makes exports more viable and more a lot easier for those producing in Kenya. Thank you very much, Professor, for joining us, and we will be speaking with you again.
Thank you and have a good morning.
You too.